Today on Alice Their Art, we will be looking at the life and artwork of Salvador Dali and his influence on the art world, especially with his work in Surrealism. The artist Salvador Domingo Felipe Jacinto Dali e Domènech was born in Figueres, Catalonia, Spain on May 11th, 1904. Salvador's father was a lawyer and notary who was very strict. His mother, on the other hand, was much less strict and was very supportive of her son's art. Salvador also had an older brother with the same name that died before the age of 2, which was about 9 months before Dali himself was born. He also did have a younger sister. Dali went to the municipal drawing school at Figueres starting in 1916. It was around this time that he had also discovered modern painting. 2 years later, his father actually organized a show of his son's charcoal drawings. Salvador's mother died in 1921, which was very tough for him, but the following year he moved to Madrid to study at the San Fernando Royal Academy of Fine Arts. It was during this time that he began to experiment with Cubism and was also introduced to Futurism and Dada. During this same time, Dali started to read the works of Freud and Lautréamont, which had a profound influence on his art, along with many other surreal artists. Freud was a neurologist and founder of psychoanalysis, where Lautréamont was an influential poet. In 1926, Dali went to Paris for the first time and was able to meet artist Pablo Picasso. Picasso had already heard of Dali from his friend Juan Miró. Miró was a big supporter of Dali and his art. 3 years later, Dali would join a Surrealist group, also in Paris, and was praised by those inside the group. Much later in life, Picasso became upset with Dali, and he refused to even acknowledge his existence for the rest of his life. In the following years, Dali's relationship with his father would become strained. He began renting a small cabin that he later bought with his girlfriend Gala, who would become his art and financial manager. They later would marry in 1934. Over the next few years, Dali traveled the world giving lectures, often in extravagant fashion, and continued painting. During this period is when many of his most famous artworks were made. He did have a lot of fame and success, but many of his surrealist peers did not care for him by this time, mostly due to his political opinions or lack thereof. He did not even take a political side during the Spanish Civil War, even though some close to him lost their lives. When World War II broke out, Dali and Gala were able to get out of France because the Portuguese consulate issued them visas, and eventually they made it to the United States, where they would live for the next 8 years, splitting most of their time between New York and California. During this time, Dali also wrote an autobiography. After the war was over, Dali and Gala moved back to Spain, living under Franco rule. This is what soured many relationships, including Picasso's. Many of his peers fought against having his art in shows due to this and him not denouncing other dictators. Salvador Dali worked on a film with Walt Disney in 1946. The film was called Destino and would not be completed until 2003 and is now on Disney+. He was also asked to design the Chupa Chups logo in 1969, which is what the current logo is heavily based on. Salvador's success seesawed for many years, but had a resurgence during the pop art movement. Andy Warhol named him one of the biggest influencers on pop art. He continued to make art his entire life until medical problems made it too difficult to do. He suffered from a tremor in his right arm, making art almost impossible. Salvador Dali died on January 23, 1989, but he has had a profound impact on the art world and the world of pop culture. He was a talented and experimental artist who worked in Cubism, Dada, and helped make Surrealism as well known as it is today. Not only was he a painter, he also sculpted, made and worked on theater productions and film, worked with fashion designers, photographers, and worked with architecture. He wrote a novel. He was well versed in the arts and will be immortalized, having 2 different museums in the world bearing his own name. I will be using Salvador Dali's stilted animals as inspiration for my own artwork. Notice how the ground line is low in these and the animals are towards the top of the picture with skinny stilts for legs. Now the materials I will be using is a pencil, eraser, and paper, but you can use whatever materials you have, whether that's a canvas, Bristol board, or anything else that you'd like to work on. I will be adding color with colored pencils just because I want nice sharp lines on my paper. Dali tended to use oil paints in most of his artworks that we looked at, but you can use whatever speaks to you. To start my picture off, since I wanted to do stilted animals, I decided what animals I wanted to make. The ones I thought of first was a hippopotamus, which is one of my favorite animals, and I thought something like a butterfly would be interesting. I then added very, very long legs. Like we talked about before, I put the animals near the top of the page with a low ground line. Now the idea with surrealism was to merge things like your unconscious and conscious, so kind of like things that you might see in a dream. So that's why I added things like the plant with an eyeball. Once you go ahead and count them up with your ideas, go ahead and add lots of detail and color. Here's my completed artwork where I did a hippopotamus with stilt legs and also a butterfly with very long legs and a little plant that has an eyeball on it, just to try to do some of those dreamlike things. Thank you for watching Alistair Art. Please like and subscribe if you can, and I can't wait to see what you make.